Hey, Mary, it's Dan McGrew. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're about to start.
So I'm the only person here?
I'm online too.
Oh, okay, so I just can't see everyone in the attendees list?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Joe Cabral. I'm the product manager for configuration automation. I'm here with my colleague, Sinja Jarara. We will be kicking off a series regarding around blueprints. There's a lot of information to cover in an hour. So we're going to initially start out with an introduction. We're going to hit some topics here, and then we're going to have a demo. Sinja is going to walk us through a demonstration. So I'm excited about this series. I'm excited about the community. I'm excited about what we can do here. This is just the first of 3 in a series of blueprints that we're going to go over. So I'm prepared for a lot of excitement, a lot of questions as we go forward. And beyond this series, we're also going to start looking into some other workshops. So let's get started here. So first and foremost, the introduction, myself and Sinja. And what we're going to discuss here is we want to have a better understanding of blueprints, the process, understanding the application before using the blueprint. What are the component blueprints? How many out-of-box blueprints exist? And how do we discover an application? Then taking the next step further, walking through some of the tab processes that we go through when we do the discovery of managed entities such as files, registry, data, which can be a database. And then we'll touch upon some best practice and then lead into the actual demo. So let's get started.
Hey, Joseph, this is Dan McGrew. In my window, all I can see is me. I need to understand who all we have on from the Austin Data Center.
Mary, would you be able to provide that information?
I just want to make sure we're not missing anyone from the team.
I think we probably can be able to provide that post. I know you want to get it now. I'll let Mary handle that, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and discuss some of the basics here. Understanding the application before using the blueprint. It's always a good and a best practice and a really intelligent approach to understand the application before we start this process. Just saying, oh yeah, we have an application, let's just go run over to use a blueprint template out of the box and let's see what happens. We need to take a moment and find out what are we looking at? What's the best method to describe the application? Do we have diagrams? Do we have a developer that we can go to so we can better understand what application we're planning to monitor? And if we can address those before we move into the actual process of using the blueprints, for example, it could be Exchange, it could be a registry entry that we have for a specific application, it could be a file structure that we're interested in, or a database. So we need to understand and take from our part as an application developer or a performance monitoring unit that may be in a data center. You know, how do I identify this application? What executable files or registry values that I'm interested in, or am I required to support from a hosting perspective or from a compliance perspective? So we have to take a step back and make sure we answer these questions before we go ahead and proceed into using the blueprints. So a lot of this is common sense. You know, we want to understand what key folders, directories to manage. We want to understand key files and database tables that we want to control for the application. Are there any security items that we need to address? Web services, database. Is there a relationship that we're focusing on? These are important. Is this Windows? Is this Linux? Is this Unix? These are important questions before we actually get started in using the blueprints. So how do we discover? How do we go through this process? We want to go ahead and discover from a server, finding the application software such as what we call components. And I'll go into a little more detail about components. Because blueprints, in essence, each software component represented by a component blueprint. And this is an instance. We're locating configuration artifacts. We're extracting configuration items. We're actively mining for those dependencies, as I said before. What are we looking for from a relationship perspective? And when we look at the component blueprint, it contains specific rules that we call like indicators that discover and verify the existence of that software. So if we were looking at SAP, if we're looking at Exchange, as I said before, another application, a CRM type of an application, we need to understand what are we looking for, what are we trying to accomplish, and those are important. And once the software is located, then the details of that software are found and extracted from those files and or the database that we may be interested in supporting in a relationship perspective. So again, what are the component blueprints? A component blueprint is an abstract of metadata defining of those components. So that's good, okay. So component blueprints contain directives describing how to locate and install component instance and how to account for and understand the many elements of that component. And this is important when we get further along in the maturity. Once we have established that we've discovered these specific components, from the server, we've got the component, we're interested in an application. It could be WebSphere, it could be Oracle, it can be SQL, whatever we're interested in. How do we translate that piece of information, that component information that becomes the CIs, maybe into a CMDB or into a service desk? Well, we're taking that step right here. These elements include in the install file system, the registry, variables, data in a database, and other runtime assets. So we need to know these. We need to understand these and bring those into here when we do our discovery. And after the elements are located, noted, and rules are applied to each element, enabling even deeper understanding of the function and constraints. Then we go beyond our blueprints, as I said, getting the relationships developed, visualizing that from a data center perspective or even from a full relationship perspective from a service perspective. And then even passing that on, as I said before, whether it's going to CMDB or whether that's going into a service desk. So this is important for us to understand. So taking a holistic view of this, stepping back, when we look at the blueprint, when we look at the tabs that go across there, what are this functionality that exists? When we talk about discovery methods, we're defining how to discover and identify those components. Specific start search paths for those files, specific file indicators, registry indicators, network probes. So
he's way back in the corner. This is Jay's Blueprint Workshop. Now, I can't see who all's in this thing, but I was expecting.
Hey, Joe, we can't hear you if you're speaking. You may need to star 6.
Sorry about that. I guess all lines are muted. My apologies. I'll go right back from the top. I'm going to make the assumption that we didn't hear when I talked about discovery methods. So from a discovery method view, we're looking at the blueprints. We're looking at how we manage straight across through the tabs. We're defining how to discover and identify those components. Specific start search paths for files, specific file indicators, registry indicators, network probes, specific multiple options that we could consider. We can also look at the discovery verification rules, which allows us to define rules that weed out the unnecessary software components. We want to avoid if we're looking at Java or GRE, there's 1.6, we're really interested in 1.7. How do I manage that? Or if there's something even more specific, and I'll narrow it down. The setup.exe from a file perspective. We're going down. How many applications have setup.exe? Or we have another name that's just transparent across all software. So we use directives that capture specific names, versions, registry, and SMP values. We look at management, define the important directories, files, registry keys, values, and database elements we would want to manage. So we get specific about the file systems that we search and the directory and database. Component variables and parameters, we define important configuration parameters on the component. Maybe there's an example that we're looking at a certain file, then certain build number, and so forth. We want to narrow down that query. And then configuration. We want to define the configuration files to be parsed or managed from an Etsy host, Etsy protocol, Etsy service, or a specific type of log-focused file. And there's more. But I wanted to touch upon those as we go forward. So out of the box component blueprints, you can view the list of component blueprints by going to the management, blueprints. We have over 400 blueprints out of the box. And configuration automation provides that standardized platform that specifically helps you as the administrator to look at. If I'm interested in .NET, if I'm interested in supporting AIX, if I'm interested in Apache, WebLogic, and so forth, giving you the base to bridge off or develop as needed, but out of the box with those blueprints set there for you. So it's a key value as you go forward. So now let's just get into some of these topics here with discovery entries, files, registry, and data. So some of the data methods or discovery methods we'll use as an example. Some of the discovery methods provide the rules that must be met in order to determine a component is present on a target server. Again, we start out, we know this is on a server. We're interested in a file directory, so a file directory indicator. And we search for a particular file or directory. That'll be interest for us, whether we have a certain compliance or requirement-based need. There's a registry indicator. We may have some under consideration. I have to make sure that all these Windows systems have the appropriate particular registry key or value noted in there. And if something changes, I want to be notified, and that goes into an additional topic where we talk about compliance. But for right now, from a blueprint perspective, we would want to have that capability. So from a file indicator, again, we're doing a search from. So we're going to have a starting point from which the discovery will search for underlying files and directories, default /, which includes all drives on the Windows. And we have a specific value specifically from a search depth, which is important because we can go ahead and say how deep do we want to go in terms of finding what we want to discover from a search perspective in a file. And then we have also the capability component always found. If it's set for yes, the discovery methods are not considered, and the blueprint will execute regardless if it's a match. So we want to go ahead and find out what in this file that's of value. So we want to go a certain depth that we're interested in. So example, you want to go into /op directory / Bob's routers configuration / and keep going. So there may be something that you may have, or from a WebEx perspective or Apache perspective. And registry indicators are very similar as well. There's a starting point which we discover, which we search for the registry values and keys. We go from a certain search depth that we want to go down into that specific set of keys. And then, as I stated before, the component always found if it's set for yes. But we can go ahead and take a look from a search from the search depth, and then do we want the component always to be found during our discovery process. So now that we've looked at that, I want to discover using verification type. We want to verify. We want to do some verification. So the verification directive used to further determine correct identity of the discovered components. We want to eliminate, and this is what we discussed before, we want to eliminate the initial discovery components that are partially installed or the wrong version. We can look at that from a larger perspective as we go forward as administrators of CCA, as that may be an opportunity to find out what's wrong on our systems and have appropriate compliance rules set into place. But we want to initially eliminate those partially installed, the wrong versions installed, and really have that true base that we're working with. Used in cases where file registry indicators cannot distinguish between two components. So there may be a component item. I've seen this in the past where it was PeopleSoft or some other applications where some of the components are so similar, it requires a little more management in terms of defining that. So we may use verification rules against the data that is retrieved during the blueprint discovery. Configuration executable, DB, and the flexible data retrieval options, database query, S&P, and I'll talk upon this a little further as we go forward. And here's an example. Some of these rules that we have were contained around the directive types that dictate the type of data retrieved and providing the method to retrieve it. So if we were instant, we have a constant, or we have a database query that's important to us to help us out within this, this management from a blueprint perspective. I want to do a query on the database. I know this is a SQL 2008. I may have a couple instances. Is it nested? What am I looking for from this database so that I know that this is maybe specific to an application that we're supporting? We can have a get file, use SNMP. We can do match file name, match registry name. We can do remote execution, web service calls. There's a lot of flexibility in this that we can utilize in determining the verification rules around what we're building from a blueprint perspective. So a quick example is the get file. So we're interested in an agent. Agent has we have to do a get file. We want to match the file name. We want to make sure that the specific stage of that file name, the path. Do we want to include anything from a regex perspective to isolate that? So we're getting down to the point. I want to know exactly what's going on with the specific file that we're focusing our attention on, and we'll do the same when we look at the registry directives. We want to verify. So I'm going through this discovery verification, and I want to ensure that the match registry name get data is late stage and it falls within this key. And what's the depth? And then what is my verification operation that I wish to utilize? It's a regex match that we want to focus on. So that will help us out in determining eliminating those, I won't call it false positives, but eliminating our perception down and narrowing our focus and delivering what we need to look at from a managed perspective. So let's go ahead and look at some managed files and registry data. So we defined the discovery of those files and directories. After the software component has been discovered, the rules are applied to assemble equivalent what would be considered a parts list for components called managed components. The managed primary folders define the important files, the registry entries, the database elements associated with that managed component. Again, we're starting to look at this. We're starting to build out that process that we're going to have for when we move further on, when we look at what relationships do I want to have. I'm starting to build those out. I've discovered the server. I'm looking at the components. I'm eliminating some of the noise, and I'm focusing on the core values that I'm interested in from a component perspective, whether it's a database, an application, or a specific set of files or registry. So we're narrowing that down, which is a huge value in cutting out that noise. Same thing with the registry. If the registries are going to be managed from change, the registry values need to be added to the blueprint. The essential method is defining the registry's entries to use regedit to identify those. Good news is that is helpful for narrowing down that scope that you have to deal with from a blueprint perspective. And that should say, for example, you're interested in a specific Apache, there's something in their Apache, a certain versioning or something that may be hosted into the registry keys we may be interested in. This would be helpful for us to walk through that perspective. And this also managing the database and the tables. The database can be managed just like files. A database needs the standard information from a client on the server that's being discovered. And Sunja will actually go ahead and discuss a little bit about this when we go ahead and look at the demo. So I'm excited about that. So we want to test those blueprints. So I want to test that, okay, I've done this work, I ran through it, and I want to run a test discovery. So I'm going to go ahead and use on the summary page, run this test, visit validate, and then I would be able to do that. So you go ahead and go to blueprints, you're going to run the test discovery after you went through the process that we went through. I'm going to discover, I'm going to go ahead and narrow down my scope from a process perspective and focus on that. We can, usually the usual thing, and I'll go into the best practice, start out small and gradually narrow down what you want to focus on from a blueprint perspective. So if you get the usual thing that I see that happens to you as a client is you get this mandate, we need to know everything that is in this service that we provide. Well, in that service, we have an Oracle database. We have some Apache servers. I think we have some WebLogic out there. Some Linux servers. We also have some Windows servers. So this can just, the scale can just go everywhere. So it goes back to where I said before, understanding the application, finding out what we need to look at. And then once we've whittled down what's important from a requirement perspective, and we've done our configuration in the blueprints, run the test, verify that we're actually seeing a successful discovery. So I'm getting back the discovery. I went through this. I see, oh, great. I see the root directory that I have. I see all the underlying files and directories discovered by the default, and then I can fine-tune that. Back into the management part, I can fine-tune that. So we know that this was a successful discovery. I can see the data. Now I can start defining that. So before we get into how do I get those CIs over here, or how do I do that, we're taking care of that. We're validating that part through the test discovery. So some quick best practice. And this may seem, yes, I know this, Joe, thank you, but I'm going to still bring it up to everyone's attention. We want to copy the blueprint before making any changes. So we have out of the box, we want to copy it. We'll make the changes to the copy of that blueprint, not the original. We'll make one change at a time to the blueprint. And that's where I made the comment, go through the discovery. Once you get to the discovery, okay, I'm going to see that work, I'm going to add more to it. So we test that. We walk through the testing of those changes. We verify the change has, can be done. If it can be done outside of the blueprint, great. But if we need to do that through the blueprint, then we do it. When you're satisfied with the change, I would disable the old blueprint and document that this blueprint has been replaced. So, and the reason I bring that up is we want to avoid having multiple blueprints, 3 or 4. And I'll be very honest, I worked on another application and I did some certification. And if you forget that you've done 2 or 3 certifications, which one's going to take this role? Which one's going to actually do the discovery? So it's best to manage that as well as possible. So understanding, taking the steps, okay, I used Oracle 11G, took that out of the box. I created a custom one because there's a certain table that I'm interested from a configuration perspective that I'm required to know about. Okay, I found that, I just got new information that I need to add another table that's focusing here, so I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to retire or put the old one, the second one, which we built, not going to be in there. So now I can focus all my discoveries on the third one, which is the new one that we're building. So, if the replacement of old blueprint, we want to make sure that's taken care of. And of what we've discovered, the snapshot's taken. We rename the blueprint to the original copy as needed, meaning the second one that we built. If we want to do that, we can do that, or we just retire it. So remember, things that I'm discussing, you can reference that in the Configuration Automation 12.8.1 SP1 bookshelf. It's under the User Guide and the Blueprint Development Guide. So at this point, I want to go ahead and move on to the demo. My colleague Sinja will go ahead and walk us through some of the activities, meaning taking what we've discussed and take a look at a system. I believe it was SQL 2008. I believe that we were going to go ahead and take a look at, and there may be more. But it's an opportunity for you to go ahead and see some of the steps that we go through when we go ahead and use an out-of-box blueprint to undertake this activity. This activity is value added from a configuration change management perspective and goes above and beyond what we would do with the typical NDG where I'm doing agent or agent list. I can focus on specifics to deliver that data, those CIs, either into a relationship or onto a CMDB or to other third-party tools. So at this time, Sinja, if you don't mind, I'll hand over the demo to you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Sindhuja Jayaraju. I work as a senior developer with CA Technologies, currently working on the CCA product. Now I will take you through this demo where we will be trying to understand the different parts of the blueprint by taking the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 out-of-the-box blueprint as an example. So I have the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 blueprint here, which is an out-of-the-box blueprint. So when we get into it, we first see the page, the tab, Blueprint tab, where we have the details of the blueprint documented. So we could use a blueprint developer or someone who wants to customize a blueprint can use this tab. Yes.
Are you sharing your desktop right now?
Yes, I am.
I want to make sure everyone can see it.
Yes, just a minute. Are you not able to see it, Joe?
I don't see it. Mary,
okay. Just give me a minute.
I want to ensure that the community can see it.
Okay.
Should be. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
It's all right. All right. Excellent.
Yeah. So
I'll
now.
let you take it away.
Yeah. Thank you. We were at the Blueprints tab of the blueprint. This is where we were looking at the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 out-of-the-box blueprint listed in the Blueprints section. So when we get into the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 blueprint, we see that the first tab is a Blueprint tab where we see the details of the blueprint, about the version, the components version, the blueprint version, and whether this is enabled or disabled for discovery, a brief description about the blueprint, the operating system that this blueprint supports, and the category of this blueprint. So this particular tab can be used to give all these details this could come very handy even when a blueprint developer or an end user is trying to customize the blueprint to provide any notes. So when I say the operating system should be Windows, if I select all, this particular blueprint can be discovered in all the operating systems, whereas if I select any Windows, then it will be discovered only in the Windows operating system. Now moving on to the next tab, which is the discovery methods. So as already Joe briefed, the first objective that we should try attacking when we look at a blueprint is how we discover that application. So we need a way to define how we discover the application, here being Microsoft SQL Server 2008. So we have the choices of using file indicators, registry indicators, or network probes. This out-of-the-box blueprint uses the registry indicators, which will be the case with most of the out-of-the-box blueprints that are developed in particular for Windows platforms. Because using the registry indicator makes the discovery faster as well. It's one of the reasons that we usually go ahead with the registry indicators. So here we see that there are three fields listed: the search from, search depth, and component always found. The search from is the field where we need to the information regarding from where the discovery should start searching from. By giving a focused path here will expedite the discovery process. Now, the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 is usually found under HP Local Machine Software, Microsoft, and Microsoft SQL Server. So this information is already known to someone who's developing or has done research on Microsoft SQL Server 2008. And if this is something which is a fact and doesn't change across any subversions of 2008, then providing this as a search from is a very good option. Also, the second thing that we are looking at is the search depth. So here the search depth is given as 5. This could be more or less. Usually the search depth is provided when we are not, bigger search depth is provided when the search from is at a much higher level, and the search registry keys or files could be at much deeper levels, and we are not exactly sure about how deep it could be. So, this usually doesn't affect in the registry cases, but a very good example is in file cases where the component could be installed at any, could be selected and installed at any parent directory. So the directory at which the component is installed could be already 10 levels deep, and we want it to, and if the search from was at the topmost level, we want the discovery to consider all the levels. So that is where the search depth comes into picture. Here we have given 5 because we are already sure that these registry keys are found within a level of 3 to 5 depth. So once we have provided the search from and search depth criteria, we also provide the component always found. So here it's very important to give no. If we give yes, then all these definitions are not considered, and the component is always discovered on a target server whenever it is discovered. So we should provide no here, and we look at, once we are done providing the search options, which include search from and search depth, we start looking at what exactly are the registry keys or values that should be present for Microsoft SQL Server 2008 to be present. The combination of CTE, security, and SQL Server SCP registry keys seem to be an optimal option. So when we provide more than one registry keys, this works on the principle of an AND logic. So only if all these 3 keys are present, then only this particular component is discovered. Also, we see here that at each of the keys, there is an option to provide depth from root or path from root. So if we clearly know from the search options route that we have specified here, if we clearly know the path to these keys, we could specify that, or the alternate option is to provide a depth from root. So in that case, if we provide a particular depth, this is a more generic way of providing the relativeness of these registry keys and the registry root which we want to finally establish. So here, what we are looking at is from under the HKey local machine software Microsoft SQL Server, we are looking for the registry keys CPE, security, and SQL Server SEP, and each of these keys are at a depth of 1 from the root. So after discovery, the registry root will be assigned to that particular registry key which satisfies all this criteria. We could see that in action once I can show you the discovered component. Now moving on to the discovery verification rules. So this out-of-the-box blueprint doesn't have the network probes as well. So network probing is another way of discovery where we scan the TCP ports for it to be open, and in some we can provide the ports which we are scanning here looking for, and we also, if we can provide a probe string, we can get the response and look for a particular match. So these are all kind of a rule that in the context of TCP scan. So when we provide a probe and we get a particular response, we do a regex match or a version regex on that, and we say that this particular component can be discovered only if it satisfies this indicator criteria. Moving on to the discovery verification rules. So with respect to the discovery verification rules, as already discussed, only providing the file indicator or the registry indicator is not enough in all the cases. Especially here in our example, so in other versions of Microsoft SQL Server as well, we seem to have a similar set of registry indicators. So how do we isolate or focus the discovery to identify only this particular version? So that's where we can leverage the discovery verification rules. So we see here our discovery verification rule, which checks for the version of the SQL Server installed. Here we have used, there are different directive types. We will be getting into the details of how to each of the directive types and how we could define different, how we could leverage each of those methods in later sessions. Here I'll talk about what we are seeing in this blueprint. So we see that we have used a constant directive type, and we are referencing version value by a $version. So what this means is we are using the variable substitution feature. So I'll take you to the component parameters and variables to give a clear idea on this. So components, parameters, and variables is a section where we could define any important information like root or version, vendor, and all these information that an administrator will be interested regarding a component, and which could be something which can be a single value. So a version is a single value and not a set of information. So a single value, key value, kind of a pair kind of information can be defined as part of component parameters. So we see here that already the version parameter is defined as part of component parameters, where we are again leveraging the registry, where we are leveraging another directive type. So let's just assume using some methodology, the version component parameter can be retrieved. So once we retrieve that version, we could use that throughout the blueprint by the format of dollar parenthesis and the component parameter. That's exactly what we are doing here. So what we are doing is we are saying we are looking for dollar version and we will match for 10 dot star. So what it essentially means is this discovery verification rule will succeed only if the version is 10 dot star. So this helps us in eliminating other component discoveries from other versions of Microsoft SQL Server. So here we also see something called stage. So in this drop-down, the two options available are early and late. So why we precisely use late here is because we depend on further discovery in the component parameters section. So that will happen, we want the discovery to continue and do the component parameters related discovery as well, and then read out any false discoveries after that. If we had selected early, then we can't use dollar version. We would probably have to use other directive types directly here and write our logic directly here. This is because the version parameter will only be available in the later stages of the discovery. So this is another point to be taken note of. Now moving on to the management section. So now we have already defined, using the discovery methods and discovery verification rules, how we will discover this particular application, which is Microsoft SQL Server 2008. Once we have already define this, and let's say we have done test discovery and we are satisfied with our discovery methods and discovery verification rule definitions, and it seems to be getting the correct component, we will then be more interested in what we can discover and what, as an administrator, I will be more interested in knowing about this particular application further. So the management section comes handy for that. Now under the file management, we can see here that there are a lot of folders defined. So as the Microsoft SQL Server 2008 component could be having a lot of, in the install directory, it could be having a lot of folders and files, but I as an administrator might not be interested in knowing about everything. And also defining this particularly helps largely in the reduction of the discovery time, because we are only focusing on what we are interested in and not in getting everything. So this is, the file management is a place to define that information. So the idea here is we have a $root which will be determined as part of my discovery methods. So in this particular example, we didn't have file indicators, but if I will talk about that in a custom blueprint shortly. But if a file indicator was defined, then as a consequence of that, a root would have been established after discovery based on the search depth and the depth from root definition that I had given. So the discovery indicators play a crucial role in determining this $root, and in the case of registry, the $registry root. So if we don't use a particular indicator, in this case we haven't used a file indicator, so it is very important for us to define the root manually and not leave it to discovery to automatically fill the value. So that is what we can see here. If we see in the list of component parameters here, we don't see the registry root listed because we have used registry indicator here, and we have provided the depth from root, which would have helped resolve the registry root. However, since file indicators was not available, it was required for us to define the root here explicitly. So here again, let's get into the details of how it has been fetched later, but this is again something which we had to do explicitly. So that is a point I wanted to get across. So once the once we are sure that the root and registry root will be established, we could start focusing on what folders that we want to manage under the root. So in this particular case, so I have the Microsoft SQL component installed here. So we see here that under the root, this will be the root essentially. We will get to that while I show the discovered component. So under this, we see all these all these is part of the file system which has been installed. So one thing that we can clearly notice in this case is I don't have the data folder defined here. So this will be a quite large and growing dynamic data related to the database files. So probably this is not something the administrators will be interested in. In most cases, even log will not be something the administrator will be interested in, and we don't give the log folder as well. So we focus on only the folders and files that we will be interested in, and we define them directly as part of the file management. Now, moving on to file filters and attributes. For all the files that have been defined under the file management, the file filters and attributes could be used to provide some meta information like filters and categories, which again we will get into in later sessions. But I'm just giving you an introduction here that whatever whatever has been defined and could be discovered as part of this blueprint, on that we could give further meta information using the file filters and attributes. Now moving on to the registry management, we see that these particular registry keys have been provided for management. One other point that I have missed here is when we look at this particular page in file management, we see that there is manage depth 5 and there's maximum files and this option to retrieve configure maximum files checkbox. So what is the significance of this is once I do give all these the files, I add all these files, I'm instructing the discovery to take care of the files and folders recursively under this up to a depth of 5. And I will only be interested, I am only interested in files of up to 50,000 count. If under any of these folders I have a lot of files and it exceeds 50,000, then I'm not going to be seeing them listed as part of the discovered component. If, however, I'm interested in getting all the files under these folders, I'll have to provide I'll have to increase the number of files. I could provide 10,000, or it depends on a case-by-case basis. But by default, we don't want to be managing everything under, and we want to have a focused discovery. So we have by default checked the retrieve configured maximum files is 50,000. So this is the same case even in registry management. So we see that even though there are multiple keys under the registry root, for this particular out-of-the-box blueprint, we have only chosen certain keys which probably are more important to the administrator. Likewise, for the file filters and attributes, the registry filters and attributes is a place where we can define any of the filters and metadata information like categories, weight, the default value, and so many more, which we will touch upon in later sessions, could be defined as part of the registry filters and attributes. Next is the data management. So this being a database blueprint by itself, we see this as part of the data management. Now, if we can think of some other application where it is integrating with or using the application is using that particular database as a backend, the same place could be used for the data management. So here we see that there are options to provide details about how we interface with this particular database. So I've provided the database name, and this is where we provide the access information. So during the discovery, when if we want the database connectivity to happen, and if we want to manage that database and further probably run some queries and get information as part of configuration, then we'll have to leverage this particular area and provide the appropriate access specification. So here again you can see that we have used a variable substitution. So the database name, database user, password, all these things seem to have been got from the component parameter variables. You can see that here. So let me now get into the component parameters and variable section details of that. So this particular section, like I said, can be used for a couple of reasons. One is I have a focused information like a version or the vendor or the product name that I just want a quick I just want to be able to take a quick look at it, and it is in the format of a key value pair. I could just get I could define that in the component parameters section. So the other reason why we could use this particular section is for us to be able to use all these in the other part of the blueprint by means of variable substitution, like we saw in discovery verification rules and in data management. Now, we see here that so there is database context, which further will be used in the managed data section, and we see some user input information like database name, password, because these are going to be variables. So we want to be able to provide this as a user input. So we see here that the directive type for these parameters has been chosen as user input. So there are multiple directive types, how each of these could be fetched, which was also covered as part of one of the slides from Joe's presentation. We could use registry, we could do a database query, or we could just provide a constant value, or we could do a web service call. As we see here, we could do a database query, and so there are multiple ways to do that. We could run a script by or a command and get the value of that and use that here. So there are multiple ways to do that. We will talk more about the directive types in a later session because that requires a lot more detail. So this is from the component parameters and variables section. The main takeaway here is this could be used to provide any key configuration information or something that the administrator will be interested at first glance to see. Now, moving on to the configuration section. So the management section provided us a way to define what we wanted to manage, what are the files and what are the registries and what are the database, which databases are we interested if in case of multiple databases that we are talking about. Like I could have a database to store my data, I could have a database to store some other another product that I'm integrating with, those data stored in another database. So I could have multiple databases. So all those could be defined as part of the management. But what we could do as part of configuration is what exactly among the managed data that are the configuration information that we seek. So in management section, we saw that we can manage the files. But once we discover, and I show you the discover data, you'll be able to see that we only get those, we only get the meta information in all these cases. When I say meta information, what I mean is, in the case of files, I'm talking about the owner, the permissions of the file, the modification date, and things like that, but not the actual contents of the file. Likewise is the case in database. So we could see the defined tables and all those, but not exactly any query output or something like that, because that further needs to be done at the configuration. That has to be done at the configuration tab. But however, in the case of registry management, we directly get the value of the registry key or value, and as well as the meta information. We will see that when I show you the discovered data. Now moving on to the configuration section. So we have file parsing, configuration executables, configuration data, and file structure classes. So the file parsing is a section where we define those files which we are specifically interested in getting the configuration information from. We would like to parse and get some content from this where where some configuration information of our interest is present. So for that, we need to define the following. We'll have to provide the path from root where this file exists, and most importantly, we will have to provide a parser or a file structure class. Now, parser is something which is, we have a number of parsers which come out of the box from CCA, and file structure class is again like some meta information, as I already mentioned, in file filters and attributes, where we talk about categories, filters, weight, default value, and all that. So such kind of information you can attach to these parsed data through the file structure class. So, so we talk about file parsing. We either have to provide a parser or a structure class. For example, let's take this particular configuration file, and it has SQL Server SQL.ini configuration structure class assigned to it. When we look at this structure class, so we look at one of the structure classes, we see that from this particular structure class, what we see is there are meta information that could be attached. So let me take some other example here. SQL Server SQL.ini configuration file. Okay. So we see here that this particular blueprint doesn't seem to have any meta information assigned as part of the any meta information assigned as part of the file structure class. So it only focuses on the parsing and not on any meta information. Now, these meta information that I'm talking about are not compulsory. It all depends on the use case, where if a particular configuration information, do we want to provide a default value to it? Do we already know a default value which could later be used in some compliance rule? Or so likewise, like if I don't want, if I want to apply a filter on it by providing don't do change detection. So it depends on case by case basis, and these are not compulsory to be always written for all the configuration files or executables that we define as part of the blueprint. So in this case, we don't see that here. We'll again have to file structure classes and the meta information that I'm talking about requires much more detailing. We will get into it in the further sessions. This is just an introductory section, and we are going to be focusing on how or why we use file parsing in configuration executables, and that's what we are focusing on right now. So file parsing is used when we want to look at the actual configuration information inside a file, and we leverage the parsers which come from out of the box in CCA for that. Now, configuration executables, this particular out-of-the-box blueprint doesn't have any configuration executables. I will be showing that in a customized blueprint that I have once we are done with this. Now, moving on to the configuration data. So this is something which is very important, especially when we talk about a database blueprint. So as an administrator, I'll be interested in looking at a lot of looking to get configuration information by querying the databases. So, this section gives us an opportunity to do that. For example, in this out-of-the-box blueprint, we see that there are multiple configuration data queries listed. We'll take an example of database files. So this particular query helps us list the data files that are used to store database contents. So likewise, this varies depending on different applications, but for Microsoft SQL Server, we are looking at all the queries that could be run as part of the master database by connecting to the master database. So and which will be which are the information that are common to a particular instance of a Microsoft SQL Server, and not database specific queries. So that's what we find here. So if we look at one of the queries, we get to give the query type, whether it is a stored procedure or it is a select query or likewise, and we can exactly provide the query related information here. Like in the case of file parsing, any of the things that we list under the configuration section requires a structured class if we want to attach any filters or provide default values and those kind of things. Then we have to leverage using structured class. Otherwise, it's not important. Otherwise, it's not important to provide that information here. Now, let's look at one example file structure class here. So this file structure class is used by one of the configuration data queries, the linked servers, as we can see here. So the output that we get is of the format of it is of a group and a parameter under it. The parameter being server underscore name. So we see that this should be the data type for this should be string, and we further this has been the file structure class has been used to define a relationship. So this is like let's just say that a file structure class provides an opportunity to do further with the data that we have collected through the file or configuration database or configuration executable in the form of providing more information about it, or defining relationships or defining rules. So we'll get to that in later sessions. Now moving on to macros. Macros is a section where we can use things under this section to do any diagnostics. So I discover the component, but at that particular runtime, I would want to see the status of a particular service or a particular query at let's just say live or not at the discovered time, but when I'm actually inspecting the discovered component, I would like to quickly check something. So that is where the macros comes into picture. So the usual use case for this is diagnostics, where I already found some problem in the configuration file, and I would like to make some correction. If I had already defined those steps as part of macros, then I could quickly run that, and if whatever changes I have made require starting or stopping of some service to get effect, then again I could use a macro which has been defined here to help me run those steps. Then moving on to the component grouping options. So the component grouping options this particular section is of use mainly in cases where we are talking about related blueprints or blueprints developed, blueprints having multiple components, distributed software. In such cases when we had to develop multiple blueprints, or in case of Microsoft SQL Server, the example is if we could also do something like have an instance blueprint and provide a database as child blueprints to it, which we have recently done. That is just one example. So this particular blueprint that we have used for the example is an old blueprint, but currently we do have that capability where we discovered the Microsoft SQL Server instances as parent components and the databases as child components. So to establish that parent-child relationship, or so such kind of things, we use this component grouping options tab. So that's about what we see as the different parts of the blueprint. Now I have the blueprint that we had taken as an example didn't have a file indicator and configuration executable, so I quickly created a customized version of it to show the file indicators. So we had chosen the registry indicators here, but we could also use a file indicator for discovering Microsoft SQL Server 2008. So we have this SQL Server.exe, and these two particular, this executable and this DLL, if they are available, then we say that Microsoft SQL Server is present. So this is, we see that we've defined the file name here, and we've also given the depth from root. So essentially, after discovery, the root will be fixed to the folder under which the SQL Server.exe is present. Also, we see under the configuration executable an example for getting the users and groups. So under the directive types, again for configuration executable, we have multiple options to accomplish this. In this example, we see that we are using remote execution, which is nothing but an ability to run a script or a command in the target and the target machine, and we get a list of information like not a key value or a simple single value information, but something like a file where we have a lot of information and we would like to see all the information. So that is when exactly we should be using configuration executables. The difference between component parameters and configuration executables is we get to work with a much bigger structured information and not just a single value. So likewise, in cases of file parsing and configuration data, because we are working with a broad range of output, we will have to provide a parsing option or a file structure option. So the file structure option, another thing I missed is each of the file structure class that we define has to have a parser defined to it. Essentially, a parser is a must for anything which is defined under configuration, and a file structure class is nothing but on the parser, after the information gets parsed, how we define the meta information is what the file structure class helps with. So we could either, if you are not interested in providing any further data or anything that you, any filtering options or providing a relationship or a rule, if you're not interested in doing all that, then it is not necessary to use a file structure class. It's very much enough to use a parser, which you can see out of the box. We have a number of parsers which should satisfy most of the cases. So, so usually with respect to files, we have almost all the formats regarding all the formats of configuration files. We have parsers for that. Whereas the configuration executable section, as you see, we are working with a script output, or we are working with we do a web service call and we get the response, and we're going to work with that. So it's important for us to make our script provide an output in such a way that it can fit one of the parsers here, because parsers, we have a set of parsers which come, and if you don't have an output which fits something directly here, it's much easier for us to customize the script that we are working with to fit the parser that is already available, rather than developing a whole new parser which will require a whole development cycle again. So that is something again I wanted to bring to your notice. So that's all about the different options or parts of the blueprint. Now we can see this out of the box blueprint. I can show the discovered component here. So let's see what is the process to discover a blueprint. The first thing is we already have a target server, and we would like for us to discover this MS SQL Server component in this particular server. So we'll have to create a management profile. I already have a Microsoft SQL management profile to which I can add the particular blueprint that I'm interested in. In our case, so these are the two blueprints that we looked into, the out of the box and the customized one. So I'm going to be going ahead and discovering this here. So I've added the blueprint to the management profile. I'm going to assign the management profile to this particular server. I'm going to be running the discovery here.
Hi, this is Joe. I know we're at the just a minute past the time that we have here. I'll let Sindra complete this task, and then we'll have some quick questions if you still want to stay around for that Q&A section. But I'll just want to let you know we already have another session. We're going to go in a little more depth on the customizing portion of this. So I thought I'll make that quick comment right here, and then once Sindra has done the discovery, we'll do a quick Q&A and go from there.
Yeah, so we have the components discovered here, and we can see what we had defined in the blueprint taking shape as part of the discovered component. So under the parameters, whatever we had defined, we see that getting listed here from the registry root to root. So this was not defined specifically in the blueprint, but in way of the file in the registry indicator definition, this has automatically got assigned. So likewise, we see what are the files that we had. If you notice, we had specifically excluded not putting data folder, and we see that discovery has ignored that and has only focused on discovering the rest of the folders. So this particular folder probably didn't have anything under it. So, and we also see the meta information that I talked about that we get to see as part of the management the modification date, the creation date, the owner, the permissions, and all those information can be seen as part of the managed section of the files. And with respect to the registry, again, we can see the actual, so if it is a registry value, we see the value of that as well here directly. And as part of the managed data, so we don't see anything here listed. The reason being that I have not provided information for the database connectivity to happen. So we had, if you remember, we had provided this as a user input. So now I'm going to go ahead and provide the password for the successful database connectivity, and I will have to do a component refresh for this to work, to take the user input that we have provided and take that as part of, consider that and do the database connectivity as part of discovery. It will take a minute. Yeah, so now, the database connectivity has worked, and I see the databases which I had mentioned under the managed data to be managed. So as part of the management, we see the columns under these databases and then indices. So if I provide more tables, then those would have also been managed, but like we already said, we were focusing on only seven tables, and discovery has fetched as what we have asked. Now, under the configuration data section, so since the database connectivity worked, we can see that the queries that we had mentioned has worked, and here, for example, we see all the data types under which should have been fetched using this query getting listed here. This is the list of databases. So under this particular Microsoft SQL Server instance, we have all these different databases defined. So those are also listed. So all these has happened because of the successful DB connectivity after component refresh. And we can define whichever query that can help us in fetching any particular configuration information that an administrator will be interested in under this section, and discovery will fetch that for us. So under the file section, again, the parsing, we can see the parsing has worked, and we see the parsed information. So this is a macros where I can run at runtime. So we see that there's nothing listed under this specifically. So these are basically steps of the macros, and we haven't got anything as a result of discovery. So what we actually do is we have to run. We have the option to run it when we are reviewing the discovered component. So I run this, and I can see that. So these are different steps in the macro, and we see that the database is offline. There are no databases offline. There are no databases still recovering. But the databases where log is truncated, we have these databases: master, tempdb, msdb, report server, tempdb. So these databases are databases where log is truncated. So that's getting listed. So this is something which we see at runtime, and macros can be used for that. So that's it from the introduction perspective of blueprints. We've seen the different parts of the blueprint and how we can use it to define how to discover, what to discover, and the details of any configuration that we are interested in discovering. And we've also seen the discovered component as well.
Thanks, Andrew. Okay, if you can pass me back the ball, I'll close this out. Just verifying you can see my desktop. You can see the
Yes,
summary.
Joe.
Okay, so this workshop session, we demonstrated some of the basic terms, discovery, management of the blueprints, some best practice. In our next workshop session, we'll discuss and demo a little more advanced topics, including how to create a custom blueprint. Hopefully this was helpful as just getting your first, your feet wet, seeing what you need to go through. There's an out-of-box, how we take the out-of-box, and then eventually we're going to talk about how we go from out-of-box to the custom blueprints. I'll let you know, I'm on the community. I do check on that every single day, multiple times. So if there's questions, enhancements, or any concerns, or just a topic that you're interested in, please post there. As the product manager, I want to make sure I'm in tune with some of your requests. And also, I just wanted to let you know about the CCA Cookbook if you're not familiar with it. We do have that. It's actually a wonderful tool if you have an iPad or using Chrome or Firefox to go ahead and take a look at it. Quite a bit of nuggets of information that's there. So with that said, I'll leave it for a couple of questions. I know we're over the limit. If you have any questions, if you don't have time for this question, I know this is going to be posted. Feel free to go ahead and get on the community, ask us questions there. We'll address those as well. But I'll give you just a couple minutes if you want, and we can go from there. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't, again, I'll check on the community. I think you might have to do the *6. All right. If there's no questions, I thank everyone for their time. Again, my name is Joe Cabral. I'm the product manager for CCA. We want to continue these workshops. We're going to add more. We want to do how to customize and take the next. We'll have a third one where we'll do additional information on blueprints. Yes.
Marvin Felder here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My apologies for the late interruption. I couldn't get him. Joe, I'm the configuration automation manager here at the state of New Jersey, administrator. Yeah. Okay, and I was watching the demonstration. My greatest concern right now is I need to be able to retrieve information from Solaris and Turk types. I need the manufacturer, the model, and or serial, and it needs to be tweaked in a different manner. What I was watching was more Microsoft SQL file parsing. Okay, I need to be able to talk to any Solaris servers that I particularly have within our network and our environment here, and sometimes sporadically AIX and Turk type as well. Okay, for Solaris, the serial has to be embedded in the EEPROM, and then I need to be able to fine-tune and tweak the actual blueprint to have it go out and retrieve that data for me to populate it so that we can then place it into our CMDB. Is there any insight on that?
Linda, do we have, I know we do this from a Solaris Zones perspective. I know we do.
Right. I get it from your technical support group. Whenever I call in a ticket, you know, but the thing is, it's a different programmable language in terms of the Microsoft SQL versus the Solaris and the Solaris interpret for the servers that we have.
Okay. So I'm wondering. I'll be very careful. Sinja, are you still on here?
Yeah. So I understand that the question is regarding Solaris Intel. I quite didn't catch what is the technology that what is scripting, or can you please come again?
Sure. There are several specific things that we're interested here in the state of New Jersey. We're interested in the manufacturer, the model, the serial, the BIOS, It generally populates, the amount of software components. It generally populates CPU, but more importantly for us, the patch level is important. Those type of things. I need to know what parameters that I need to use to go into a group of Solaris servers, and then generate a blueprint that tells it clearly to go out and grab the actual serial manufacturer, the model, the BIOS, the patch level, the version level of the server. Out of the box blueprint will populate a name. It'll tell me whether or not it's in a managed state. It indicates that it is in fact a Solaris operating system, and it gives me a variety of things. Sometimes I'm able to retrieve the amount of software components, but what's vital for us is the actual the hardware and anything else that we could potentially get. But right now, my asphyxiation is on serial number, model number, and manufacturer, if you will.
Right. Regarding what you're talking about, do we already know how to fetch these, not from the blueprint perspective, but do we already have some commands or some, when we talk about Solaris, I'm assuming that we can do shell scripting in that. So,
right.
So that is possible using blueprints. We just took an example of Microsoft SQL Server because
right.
everybody is probably familiar with the application.
Right.
When I was talking about the component parameters and configuration executable, so it gives you, there is a particular directive type called remote execution in it, where we can provide a command or
right.
a script, and that's going to be executed, and you can get that value up in CCA through that blueprint. So I believe what you're saying is the out-of-the-box blueprint is not providing that, but yes, we could customize it if we already know
right.
So if we don't, probably from my perspective, I'm already not aware of how to do that. I probably need to do some research on how to get that information.
Right. Joe,
but
I'm sorry, Joe just mentioned that there are going to be several more WebEx. I'm just introducing this because it would be very beneficial for me to be able to view the avenues to pursue to get to the goals I'd like to reach.
Yes, no, I think that's good. I'm also recommending Marcus to put this on the community page.
Great,
to get
great.
Not just myself, but also the community, because I would bet, a nice steak dinner that someone's already done this. But I mean, I understand. I used to work in a Solaris zone environment,
right?
So, and I'm not supposed to be a technical guy,
right.
But we need to figure out how that would be best accomplished. Whether you can script through there, that can be done. So I appreciate this. This is actually good.
Not a problem. Not a problem at all. Now I could tell you from my little experience. I'm not a Solaris guru by any stretch of the imagination. I know enough to be dangerous. It's actually populated via a sneak command in terms of configurations. Is a sneak command that enables you to populate the serial for Solaris. But I need to be able to go in and know the parameters. I started out with the the Cohesion Application Configuration Manager at version 5.0, and then I'm kind of in a test environment. I worked with 12.7, and now I'm at 12.8. But the blueprints are different they're similar but different in terms of parameters and where to place the information. All of this information would be very, very helpful for me. It's vital that I kind of embrace this and learn to master it, if you will.
This I think is good, and I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
No problem.
This is something we could probably post even on the, like I said, on the community, so everyone has an opportunity to look at it.
That'd be great, Joe. If someone can just yourself, Karen Joseph is our salesperson, in my understanding, our direct liaison, if you will. If she's aware, and you guys can, I guess, just toss me an email and let me know that there's been, I guess, an update and some insight as to how to go about to make this happen, that'd be great.
Okay, that we can do.
Okay, do appreciate it.
All right.
All right. Thanks for the demonstration. Greatly appreciate you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Joe. All right. Be well. Senor, thanks.
Any other questions? Again, the big thing is I want to get these posted, these questions, and then solutions also on the community, so it's shared amongst the community.
Right.
Going there. I know there's been questions about different things about blueprints. That's why I wanted to have this whole blueprint workshop going forward. Yeah.
And while we're on this note, just so you know, I'm only touching one entity. That's our Solaris servers. We're a multi-platform environment here. So there's some AIX servers as well that I may need to touch down the road. Also, there's some Linux operating systems that I may need to touch blueprint-wise. So I don't want to exclude them. You know what I mean? I just kind of started with the Solaris because that's the one we've been kind of doctoring on, if you will, to try to populate the proper information. I'm also going to need the same chemistry for Linux. If there is a different chemistry within the blueprint for me to populate the model, the manufacturer, and the serial for a Linux operating system, I'm definitely going to need that because we're diverse. We got multi-platform servers here, if you will. We got multiple flavors of servers. If that helps you any.
Oh no, this is good. I thought we.
Right. I need Linux. I need Solaris. Potentially the AIX. Windows, the Microsoft SQL. Windows is pretty. It's you know what I mean. It's just the Intel or whatever the interp type is. It grabs it, you know, for the most part. But it's the servers that I utilize with, you know, the SSH authentication, if you will. And again, those are my Solarises, my Linux, and my AIX. So I'm hoping that I'm putting something on the table that can steer you in a direction that puts us to a win-win situation for everybody.
Yes. And let me just make sure I understood. It was model, manufacturer, series, BIOS?
Serial. Right.
Sorry.
It's model, manufacturer, serial, BIOS versions, the patch level, the OS level is important to us. You know, we try to retrieve all the information we potentially can. When I send out this algorithm to go out and talk to the server, we retrieve that information, and then we will then house it in our CMDB database eventually. But we need to, one, touch the information, retrieve it, proof it, make sure it is the proper information for the proper servers. You know, we got a lot of virtual stuff that it, you know, could potentially touch VMs and what have you, that we need to verify that information is accurate before placed into to our database.
Very good. Very good.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
No problem. And again, Joe, my name is Marvin Feld. I'm with the state of New Jersey, and greatly appreciate any and all insights you could possibly provide me with to be a better me.
All right. We will.
All right. Okay. And again, Karen Joseph is our liaison. She normally communicates with us and keep us very informed. And you know, if I guess between the two of you, if when it is posted, if we've got, I guess, a skeleton blueprint or a copy that could possibly lead us in the right direction, then I think we'll be graduating, if you will.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks, Marcus.
Okay, you bet. All right, Joe. That does it for me.
All right.
All right. Okay.
Let me check if anybody else out there in the community
is
on the call. Anyone else have any questions before we call this call done?
Hi, Joe. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Yeah. Brilliant session. Definitely many takeaways for me. I'm starting with the product. I'm trying to learn various options and various capabilities of the product. What I want to ask is, in your future workshops or in your in near future, can I expect a best practices guide, for the whole product as such? While I was evaluating or while I was learning about the product, I found that there are many ways to do things, and several times I got confused. Let's say when I was trying to create a management profile, I was wondering which set of blueprints to add and which set of blueprints not to add, because there are multiple panes in it, and we could go either way. So if you plan anything like that, it would be greatly appreciated. That's all. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. And the best practices are always evolving. But I appreciate that. Thank you. just noted that. All right. I appreciate everyone's time for joining us for this workshop. Again, there'll be another one. It'll be posted. And always go to the community if there's some questions. Put it on there. We want to be involved with that, and everyone involved in the community. Don't just wait on Joe, because one of your peers may give you that and go, oh, that's what I need to do? Great, and I can move on. So that's what we want. We want everybody involved.
Beautiful.
So I thank everyone for their time on this call. This will be posted, and we'll have the next session in a few weeks.
Beautiful. Thank you for your time.
All right, guys.
Be well.
Thank you.
Okay.